to I Am Because He Is. With me, Talia Elias. Today we're going to be discussing a topic that has impacted each of us. Who gets to define you? We live in a world with so many answers to that question, from social medias to friends to school to athletics and more. And those standards that are telling us who we're supposed to be are exhausting and wrong, and I'm not here for it. Today we're going to talk about Christian identity in a culture of performance. Then we're also going to talk about worth and value and the question, am I enough? And then lastly, we're going to discuss who God says we are versus who the world says we are. We live in a culture where identity is based on performance. From looks, success, achievements, sports, grades, likes, followers, status, everything. And we're always under the pressure that we feel like we need people to approve of us, or we need to please people. For instance, if you're an athlete, you must win, score, or excel, or you're not good enough. If you're a photographer, you must create viral and good work to be good enough or even successful. But here's the thing, those standards are created by people and not by God. They're unrealistic and impossible to always achieve and do. And we're humans, we're bound to fail. We are imperfect, we are not perfect. So how can we live to these standards that are hinting or wanting us to be basically just perfect? And when we do fail, we end up doubting ourselves and we ask, am I enough? Or am I blank enough? Am I smart enough? Am I pretty enough? Am I athletic enough? The list goes on and on and on because we have so many comparisons because of these standards that are set. And people have so many personal stories as to how they've been impacted by these standards because everyone deals with this. Not one person doesn't. Even if someone is successful, there are other things they have to live up to and they can't reach. And even if they're successful, they still are dealing with other standards that they are unable to always meet all the time. And let's say they go bankrupt or something, or they post something and a lot of people disagree with it and they lose a lot of followers. Boom. They lost that standard because it's impossible to always have and always remain and have consistently. I believe it's really important to share stories because one, we don't know how much it can impact a person because we don't have the power to control how much it's going to impact them. Second, they can show others how Jesus is working through your life and you can then share Jesus through that. You can start off with sharing a personal story, which then it can help with a relationship and a connection, and then you're able, if you would like, and if you guys are close enough, to then possibly bring up Jesus in that conversation, and it's a little easier way because people find that difficult to just bring up Jesus out of nowhere. I have a lot of my own personal stories, but one of the biggest ones that still is occurring and I'm still dealing with is injuries. I get injured so much, especially in soccer. And yeah, I got injured before high school, but I always thought it was cool because I was young and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm getting injured. Haha. I don't know. I could not explain myself for back then. But they were never major until high school. I've been playing soccer for 4 years. I'm a senior now. So my freshman year, I was getting concussions. I got 2 concussions during the soccer season, and it was pretty bad because they were right after one another, basically. But I just kept pushing myself because, yes, I was in pain, but I wanted to be good enough to be able to play because I was one of the only freshmen. It was maybe me and one other girl, I believe. And I just wanted to be able to start, and I had been starting, and I just wasn't in the right mindset. And I also just loved playing. So I was like, I'm not going to let a concussion stop me. What? I want to play. I don't care about the physical pain. I'll push through it. And it was very difficult. But then my sophomore year, I got another concussion. But this one, it was a severe concussion. And my symptoms from before still hadn't left. So everything was 10 times worse. And then I wasn't able to play in the last couple games. And I felt so useless. Even in school, I was having half days 3 times a week for most of the year because I just couldn't even focus on reading, and reading made me cry from how much pain I felt. and like I was just so sensitive to light and to sound, and my body was so exhausted, and it was difficult because I was trying really hard to get good grades, but that was impossible. With how I was, it was impossible, and I wasn't asking for help, and it was not fun. And then I also then felt not good enough in academics. But then I started to realize that I was thinking that. And I was like, I have literally no control over these things that have occurred to me. Why does it have that much power to tell me that I'm not good enough? Or to allow me to think that I'm not good enough? And then I started realizing that there was more to life than just being good enough for people or sports, because I was a really bad people pleaser, and I still am sometimes. I'm working on it. But I just started to realize like my life right now is just making sure I please people, making sure I am good enough at sports, at everything that I do. And I just didn't really have friends when I thought about it, and I didn't really have a relationship with God, and I didn't even know myself. So then I started to rethink that my freshman and sophomore, mainly my sophomore year, and then I realized that I had so many opportunities to make friends, and boom, throughout my freshman and sophomore year, I met both of my best friends. And before high school, before that, I had never had a best friend. Like ever. Maybe whenever I was in kindergarten or first grade, I called people my best friend, but I never called anyone. At least I know for sure in middle school, you're my best friend. And I felt like I had to, but I just kept telling my friends, I was like, I'm sorry, I can't call you my best friend because it's just really difficult for me. And I also just don't know what a best friend is. But then I met two girls, and it was amazing. They helped me a lot throughout those 2 years because of all the concussion and injuries, and I've just felt lost because I didn't know myself. They helped me with that, and they helped me realize how I can grow a relationship with God because I didn't really know how to. And they're just there for me. They're super funny, and they're super caring, and we always hung out, and it was really good. And I'm so grateful for them. So then my junior year, I was still getting injured, but I didn't have any concussions that were related to soccer. But this year, my senior year, I've gone hit in the head a couple times. And it's been scary because they've been pretty bad hits. There was one game where I got hit in the head twice, and I really thought I might have gotten a concussion. And the doctor had said one more concussion or one more hit to the head from soccer, and you're out. No more playing sports. And whenever I got hit in the head, the second time in that one game, I was crying, not because it was like very painful, but I was just so disappointed, and I was scared. I just had a lot of fear because it's my senior year. I've been wanting to score at least one goal, and I don't know, I just wanted to enjoy my last year. So that's one thing. And basically, I just accepted after that game, I'm out for the rest of the season. And I told everyone, and all of my teammates were so upset. But then I called my doctor, and basically he said that because I don't think it's a concussion, like the next day it wasn't that painful because I didn't think it was for sure a concussion, that I was clear to play, but I had to be really careful. And then I got hit in the head, I think, 2 more times in different games, but I was fine. I didn't have like migraines or anything, but like the amount of fear and disappointment I felt after that one game, thinking I was out for the rest of the season, I just started to realize like, wow, I'm back to my sophomore self. Like, I'm just like questioning, am I enough? And I'm focusing on like, not focusing on having fun in soccer, but trying to be good enough to be accepted. And after that hit, I was like, Lord, I just need you to take the wheel. I have no control over that, and I am enough because you say I'm enough. And yeah, I might not be the greatest soccer player. I'm not. I can tell you that. But I enjoy playing, and I keep every game pushing myself to my best of my ability. even if people tell me that I'm not, I'm going to still do that because I know what my best is and no one else does. And then I began to write Jeremiah 29:11 on my knee, and same with my other captain, just because I was getting scared anytime I heard the ball. Like, I actually was like, I don't know, I was just anxious every time the ball came near me above my knees. I was like, oh no, I do not want to get hit in the head. And then I wasn't fully playing to the best of my ability because of the fear and anxiousness that I felt. Even though I was trying really hard to play the best of my ability, just whenever that ball came up, it was, yeah. And I felt a little bit more confident each time that I wrote that verse, because Jeremiah 29:11 says, "For I know the plans that I have for you, declares the Lord, plans for welfare and not for evil, to give you a future and a hope." And I've always loved that verse. For senior, I'm trying to write it every game so that I don't feel scared anytime the ball comes for me, because I know that the Lord has great plans for me, and they're not going to turn out for evil. They're not for evil. They're not supposed to hurt me or harm me, but they're supposed to give me a future and a plan. So I just continue to remember, I am so excited to see what the Lord has planned for me. These concussions aren't something to stop me. They're just a setback. And I just kept working through it. Every time that I faced a difficulty from my injuries, I viewed it as not something to stop me, like a roadblock, but just a detour. And that helped me a lot, because in my head, I see a continuous road that's still left for me. See that there's been some detours in my life. I don't see them as stopping. I don't see that I should feel so depressed because of this minor setback, because it does not have that much power over my life. Something new I'm going to be doing for this episode, at least, I'm going to end each section with some questions that you can journal, think about, answer over this next month, because I won't be uploading until November 1st. So some of these questions are, what are some standards that God has set for us? And are we good enough for the Lord? And what does that mean? So now we're going to talk about, am I enough? And more focus on worth and value. So again, like I said before, we tend to always ask this question throughout our whole entire lives, am I good enough? But whenever you ask that, enough for who? Who are you enough for? Well, if it's person A, just a random person, their opinion of you can change in a snap of a finger. That quick. Literally just boom. It can change so easily. That means that it's unreliable, because it can just change at any point. There's no constant. If it's a group, the group's opinions can just, again, drift over time. Same thing as a person. If it's social media, what's viral today is forgotten by tomorrow. So again, all three of these, it's saying the opinions or the standard can snap just like that and have a different opinion or a different standard. So again, all of those are unreliable. So how do we, if it's unreliable, how do we rely on it and expect to have a firm found identity and a firm answer to, am I enough? You can't expect that when it's literally unreliable. So that means don't rely on it. So to even try to be good enough for everybody, we'd have to constantly, all the time, be pushing ourselves and changing ourselves and improving ourselves. And that's what I meant by it's exhausting, because you're constantly doing it over and over again, and you're not going to be able to see results because you can't please everyone. It's not possible, at least for a constant, steady, approval. Because even if we do achieve something, or we do get the approval of us from a sport or a person, it's so short-lived. And only some achievements may get applause, may be seen. And then that's just an endless cycle, because whenever you do have an achievement where it doesn't get applauded or recognized, then you want to keep proving yourself so that you are approved by everyone else and that you do get that recognition. And just continuously doing things to get applause or to be seen, again, is so tiring, because you don't know and you have no control over if it gets seen or not. Because we are seeking to accomplish and meet the standards created by man and not by God, it's impossible to reach that because the standards are set so high and so unrealistic that they're just impossible. And if we're trying to get the approval of everyone else, because they are so unrealistic and can change their opinion in the snap of a finger, it is again impossible. So we're just literally going against the tide. And if we're doing that based on our own understanding and our own strength, this will just constantly lead to burnout because we're pushing ourselves to accomplish something that is impossible to do that by ourselves. And even it's also just impossible to meet the standards made by man. The issue isn't that the bar is set too high, but it's just that it's impossible to do and impossible to do that over an extended period of time and even to feel the results for a long time. It's that approval that we seek is short-lived because it's a temporary thing. But next, we're going to talk about who God says we are versus who the world says we are. Well, what's the difference between who God says we are versus who the world says we are? The world says that identity and growth is earned and measured by performance. God says our identity is given, fixed, and relational, and our self-worth is received but not earned. Who gives us our identity and our self-worth? God, not men, not people, God. Psalm 139, 13-14 says, "For you formed my inward parts. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Wonderful are your works. My soul knows it very well." And that's just talking about how we are made for a purpose and with purpose. So that means if we're made with purpose and for purpose, that we are enough because we do have purpose within us. And God gave us that purpose, and we have a purpose to live, which is for God. And God is enough by a million times. God is amazing and He's perfect. Like, how can that even compare to us? Like, do you understand? Like, we are made with a purpose and for a purpose. Like, even being made with a purpose is crazy, but for a purpose is like, wow. Like, I'm so thankful for that. Like, seriously? Like, what? Like, we aren't useless. We are literally made for a purpose. So once we find that, like, imagine how that's going to feel. It doesn't say that we are only fearfully and wonderfully made when we're successful, productive, smart, beautiful, on the top. Nothing. We are always fearfully and wonderfully made. That's it. Period. Like, there is nothing in those two verses says, oh, we're only this when blank. No, we always are fearfully and wonderfully made. And then in Ephesians 2:10 says, "For we are His workmanship, created in Christ Jesus for good works, which God prepared beforehand that we should walk in them." I believe almost a year ago, my youth group that I go to in town was speaking about poema, which means we are His workmanship, and His masterpiece. And the pastor at that church, Dan Nold, said, "Words are not what define us. We are His masterpiece, His workmanship, so we are what He does." I wrote that down because I viewed the words do not define us as words from people do not define us. Words that we may say to ourselves do not define us. But what defines us is that we are His workmanship and His masterpiece. And that means because we are His workmanship, we are what He does. And then in Ephesians 2:10, it says, "Created in Christ Jesus for good works, which God prepared beforehand." This shows how our identity is received and not chosen. God already had it planned beforehand. He literally said, it literally says that we are created in Christ Jesus for good works, which God prepared beforehand. He planned it already. He planned who we would be beforehand. That's how I see it. And that's just covering the point that we made earlier. And then in Jeremiah 1:5, let's pull that up. "Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you, and before you were born, I consecrated you. I appointed you a prophet to the nations." This explains even better how our identity is received and not chosen. Like, before we were even in our mother's womb, He knew us. So who we are, was already known by God and formed by God, not by anyone else. He didn't just know it because someone else formed it. He knew it because He formed it Himself. Before we were in our mother's womb, before we were even born, before anything in our lives basically ever occurred. Also, during the talk that we had at youth group, we also spoke about how jars are described by what's inside of them. Like a jar of peanut butter. The jar isn't peanut butter. It's inside the jar is peanut butter. So a verse that speaks about that, because it took me a minute. I was like, what? But then it made a lot of sense when I read this verse. And that's 2 Corinthians 4:7. But we have this treasure in jars of clay to show that the surpassing power belongs to God and not to us. It says treasures in jars of clay because it's kind of saying that the surpassing power that's from the Lord is hidden within us. So like we're the jar, it's hidden within us. Our relationship with the Lord is hidden within us, but like it can be physically expressed, but it's between me and the Lord. That's kind of what that's saying. Our identity is like that treasure that God has placed in us. So that surpassing power, that surpassing identity that God has given us, that is unbeatable, like that firm foundation that's planted within us. So we don't want to compare our physical attributes to one another or focus and make our identity about our physical attributes. Rather, we want to base it and like look towards the treasure, the little smaller things that are inside of us that make us who we are, because those are more important than what's our outer appearance. Even when we're looking towards others, we don't want to focus on their physical attributes, whether they're athletic, smart, stuff like that. It's like those are things that can change. Like, are they athletic enough? Are they strong enough? I don't know. Are they beautiful enough? Like, oh my gosh, they dress so cute every day. Like, we don't want to focus on that. Rather, to have a relationship with one another, we should be looking towards the inward, what's inside of their heart, because that's the truest place. So we want to be able to be known by what's inside of us, not by our jar, because our jar can change. Jars of peanut butter can be glass, it can be plastic, and it can look different. People might think plastic is ugly, glass is beautiful, but what's on the inside is the same. It's peanut butter. Like, I'm trying to like put peanut butter and like treasure to make more sense, because that's a visual representation that we see every day. But like, it's just like, despite what our outward appearance is, we can still have the same firm foundation, Jesus, on the inside. There's different variations of peanut butter because we are all different, but we're all still the same thing. We also believe the same thing. We're founded in the same thing, but just with different variations, because we are not all the same. Not everyone can have the same relationship with the Lord and same history, or same life than anyone else. So we're all different in a little bit, but we all can have the same firm foundation, same base, the same overall thing. So over this month, I have some questions, again, that you can think about. Where do you see yourself striving for approval? How do you feel when you don't meet the standard? And where have you let performance culture define you? Thank you so much for joining me and listening to this episode. If this resonates to you, subscribe or follow so you don't miss any upcoming episodes or other content that I may upload on any other platforms. This podcast should be available on all platforms in a video format on YouTube. So remember, we are because He is, and because of Him, we get to live out that truth every day. Talk to you next time.